here with author and designer Ashley Bunting. Welcome, Ashley.
Thanks, Katie.
Glad to have you. And
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you have a great project for us.
Yes, I'm showing how to make an armature for like a chandelier earring,
Cool.
and then you can doodle and play with thinner wire to build up the structure.
Sounds awesome. How do we get started?
We get started with 10 inches of 18 gauge wire. So I will cut that here.
All right.
And now I'm going to mark the center point and then mark the inches out from that center point. And that will be where my loops will be formed. So 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 6, 7, and 8. And this design definitely has like some whimsy to it, so it's not about making anything perfectly. Then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and pinch on that middle point and rotate around.
That seems pretty easy.
It's very easy. So I've just made my bottom loop, and then I'll move over and do that same thing.
So you would just want to make sure that the loops are always on the outside of your wire.
Yes. So that guy.
Can you do this with other gauges, or is it best to stick with 18?
You can do another gauge. This piece actually goes through your ear, so you don't want to go any thicker than 18 gauge, but you could go a little bit thinner. We're also going to do a little bit of work hardening, so if you did go thinner, that would combat the thinner, softer gauge.
Sure.
So once I finished one side, I'm going to pop over to the other side and do my other loops.
Okay.
There.
So I know you're using copper wire.
Yes.
Do you recommend putting any kind of coating on it before you put it through the ear?
I find that I'm not affected by it. It's just some people are. It just depends on if you're going to be selling your work. You probably do want to put a coating on it, or you could do this in a silver, gold, and just treat these as prototypes.
It would be beautiful and sterling, wouldn't it?
Yes. Okay, how many more do I have
It's like
here?
one more there, huh?
Yep. Okay. So I've got my loops made, and now I'm just going to gently bend my wire up to get it into the form that I want it to look like, a U. And then I'll use my Sharpie again to form the ear wire portion. And what you do is you'll just place it over here and gently bend it around. And I'm going to use this last loop as the hook for my ear wire portion. So I'll just trim my loop here.
Oh, so that's how it fits together.
Yep. And so this will just be rotated on the opposite plane like so. So the little end of the ear wire, which I'm going to turn up right here. That's like the little catch, and it also makes it easier to go through. And I'll just trim it off. Like so.
Yeah, very clever.
And then it's just kind of about manipulating it to make sure that it's in the right positioning to actually open and close. Like that.
Yeah.
And then I like to go around with my, I'm actually going to grab these pliers, flat pliers here, and just give each loop a little squeeze.
So you're kind of work hardening the metal as you go.
Yeah. So I'll just do this to each of the loops. And then I also like to texture the wire in between the loops. And I do that with the same plier. I just squeeze, hop over, squeeze. And you get like a little hammered look. And
That's a great idea.
It also hardens it. Yeah, so it makes it look a little bit more finished too, rather than it just being little wire bit, you know?
Right. So. I hadn't thought about using my pliers to create texture. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, it makes it easier. You don't have to have a hammer around, especially with something that's kind of delicate and going to be held close to your hand. It can be difficult to hammer it there. So I've got my piece now, and now that it's work hardened, I'm going to have a little bit more spring to my wire, and it will hold the earring closed a little better.
So then what's a way that you would recommend embellishing this?
Sure, so I'm gonna grab this piece here and show how you could add another petal onto here.
Okay.
So let me move this out of the way. This is 24 gauge, and you want to make sure your wire is secured to the base. So always give yourself a tail to hang on to. You don't want to be finicky trying to grab onto this tiny little piece of wire to work with. So I'm securing my wire to my frame here by giving it a couple wraps, like so.
That looks good.
And then I'll form my petal. And it's really about just playing around. There's no right or wrong answer. You can play with kind of thickness and weight, line weight with this by building up your wire.
It really has a sculptural look to it.
Yeah. So there's a wrap. And you can kind of feel when it feels secure on there, that's enough. Like so.
Nice.
And then you can trim your little tail. And another little tail over here. And I'll use my pliers to kind of scrunch. Sometimes your coils get spread out. You can always use your pliers to kind of squeeze them back into a nice little wrap position.
Nice.
And tuck my little tail into place.
Very good.
And that's the petal. And then you can always attach over to another petal. And the more you do, the more solid it's going to feel, because it is a thinner, finer wire.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the other samples that you brought and just talk through those.
Sure. So this one here on the end is using the interior empty space to make a webbing. So it's that technique of wrapping around the armature and then sending the wire across the open space to the opposite side of the armature. And just kind of playing with that zigzag woven pattern. The next sample uses the wire to wrap between the loops. So it's following the shape of the armature. And then once I've done that a few times to kind of build up the bulk of the earring, I go back and wrap around the woven pieces.
Yeah, it's interesting how this one is more of a messy coil, or we can call it organic.
Yes.
And this one is a very neat and tidy.
Exactly. So it's really, I'm almost was trying to work with the wire as a line and as if I was just kind of doodling, because I tend to doodle this petal shape all the time, and so I was like, well, let me try to make that.
How do you do it in wire? Yeah, that's
in wire. The next one is just using a textured jump ring, so you get a little bit more movement when this actually gets picked up. You know, the jump rings will move around, and you could always add beads off of those loops, or you could connect the jump rings together in another way with more wire. So it's just kind of working with a base and then building from that base to make something fun and unique that's your own.
Yeah, I love the idea of, I'm going to call this wire doodle earrings from now on, I think.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you.